Mr. Secretary, welcome. Good to have you here.
Todd.
In response to media coverage over the last few days in the Washington Post, NBC News, the Daily Beast, and my hometown newspaper, the Indianapolis Star, I'd like to bring up the situation of Peter Kassig and 3 other Americans who lost their lives at the hands of ISIS. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request the following columns from the Washington Post, Indy Star, and NBC News be added to the record.
That'd be included.
Mr. Secretary, you may recall a meeting with the Kassig family last year, but as brief refresher, in October 2013, Indiana native and former Army Ranger Peter Kassig was on a mission of mercy. He was delivering humanitarian aid to suffering people in Syria. He was taken hostage by ISIS, and sadly, after months of torture and incredible hardship at the hands of these ISIS terrorists, and in spite of his embrace of Islam, he was brutally beheaded. Sadly, 3 other Americans, James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, and Kayla Mueller, also lost their lives at the hands of ISIS murderers. I know each of their stories are familiar to other members of this committee. Since that time, some of the murderers, known as the Beatles, have been killed in U.S.-led drone strikes, but others remain at large, and I know you agree they must be brought to justice. I believe that the United States government should work tirelessly, independently, and with the cooperation of allies to hunt down the killers of these Americans and bring them to justice here in the United States of America. Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me?
I do, and you should know that the President of the United States agrees as well.
What efforts can the State Department and our missions overseas take to bring this about?
So it's a broad effort. I think we're making progress. It's Department of Defense, their intelligence assets, the broader set of U.S. intelligence assets, all aimed at making sure we understand, and then working with important partners too, who want justice but have a different set of rules about how to think about that. So working to convince them that proceeding to bring them to justice is the right approach. I'm very hopeful that we will in the coming weeks have a good outcome here.
You alluded to different perspectives that exist out there. What precise obstacles stand in the way, and what can you do to overcome them?
So an example, and I'll stay away from this particular instance, but an example is when we make a decision from time to time to bring someone back from someplace else, either through extradition or through another legal process, the countries will say because we have the death penalty or because of a certain set of rules we have here, they won't either permit that to happen or share the information that we might need to complete a successful prosecution. And one of our roles is to make sure that those countries will permit us to do that.
I do want to interject, and it's important to note here, though you were just using an example, it's my understanding that the 4 families are no longer pursuing the death penalty for these terrorists. Their hope is that this shift will alleviate any challenges whatsoever that we've encountered with the British government and their justice system in allowing the prosecution to move forward in the United States.
I appreciate that, Senator Young, and that's important. I'll leave it at that. Yes, sir.
I am committed to working with you, and I suspect there are other members of this committee who will join me in that effort to ensure that justice is delivered and delivered here in the United States. Will you commit to working with me in this committee to ensure that we pursue this matter accordingly?
Of course, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'd like to move to the United Nations and how over the past several years, Mr. Secretary, the U.S. has lost ground in its engagement with a number of UN bodies and programs. Most recently, the administration formally submitted paperwork to withdraw from the World Health Organization. At the same time, the role and influence of other countries, particularly the communist government in China, has been growing at the UN. It's expanded its role in a range of UN agencies, with Chinese nationals currently holding the top job in 4 of the organization's 15 specialized agencies. the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Food and Agricultural Organization, the International Telecom Union, and the UN Industrial Development Organization. For comparison, a French national leads 2 specialized agencies, the IMF and UNESCO. The UK leads 1, the ILO, and the US leads just 1, the World Bank. Although a US national does lead the UN Children's Fund and the World Food Program, which are large and prominent UN organizations. So building on Senator Murphy's earlier line of questioning, why don't we look beyond the World Health Organization? And I ask you, Mr. Secretary, what implications does this losing of ground within UN bodies and agencies have on advancing U.S. national security interests and other foreign policy priorities that we might have in the UN system?
Yeah, it's very significant, and it is a at least 15-year-long slide that has taken place in growth of the Chinese Communist Party's influence in these institutions and organizations. We've done a couple things to turn this around. We had real success at the World International Property Organization, right? The Chinese thought they had the fast track to that. We put up a good candidate. It wasn't an American candidate, but it was a candidate that we believe has an understanding of intellectual property in the same way that freedom-loving democracies do, and we crushed them. And it was an amazing diplomatic effort. We built up coalitions with the Indians, the Brits, the Australians, and then built it out all across the world. We're asking for about $20 million in this budget to take the team that we built there and make it a permanent team that is focused on these major elections for these 15 institutions. And then there's another set that are slightly different but still very important. And then we have a second set of operations, which is it's not just the leaders that matter at these UN organizations. They have big bureaucracies underneath them. And we are sadly inadequately represented at every level inside of these international bodies, and it matters. It matters that there's someone there. It matters that they're American, but it matters that they, if they're not American, that they come from the nations that understand the rule of law and how the world ought to be conducted in a way that we do. And so I've actually worked closely with about 7 other countries to build out an effort that is very focused on exactly this. Sometimes, frankly, we've had opportunities, we just didn't we were offered a place and didn't put anybody forward. That's not the right way to go. We need to make sure we get it right. I'm confident that in a year and 2 years, we'll be in a better place than we are today, and I hope we'll have the resources to do that. It's a little bit of a resource issue, but it's a lot of a focus issue, and I think I've cleaned that up materially.